37 years ago, India discovered the dreaded HIV virus had reached its shores when blood samples from 6 adult workers tested positive. It was largely due to the efforts of one young scientist, but until now, her pioneering work has been all but forgotten. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you like the video, please like, share, and subscribe. In today's video, we are looking at the efforts of an unsung hero whose revelations saved millions of lives. When it was first suggested she screen people for HIV/AIDS, Selapan Nirmala balked. It was at the end of 1985 and the 32-year-old microbiology student at the medical college in Chennai was looking for a topic for her dissertation. The idea came from her professor and mentor, Sunidhi Solomon. Formal tracking of AIDS cases had begun in the United States in 1982, and the medical authorities in India didn't want to be caught napping if the disease reached India. But at the time, the idea of that happening was widely considered unthinkable. The press at the time wrote that HIV was a disease of the debauched West where free sex and homosexuality were prevalent. Indians, on the other hand, were portrayed as heterosexual, monogamous, and God-fearing. Some papers even remarked smugly that by the time the disease reached India, the Americans would have found a cure. Also, the city of Chennai and the surrounding Tamil Nadu region were considered especially traditional societies. Hundreds of samples, collected from the supposedly more promiscuous city of Mumbai, had already been tested at the Virology Institute in the western city of Pune, and no positive results had turned up so far. So, it was not surprising that Nirmala was reluctant and told her mentor that she was pretty sure the result would be negative. Solomon, however, persuaded her student to give it a shot. It was decided that Nirmala would collect 200 blood samples from high-risk groups like adult workers, gay men, and African students. But this was not an easy job. Nirmala had previously worked on leptospirosis, a bacterial disease transmitted from dogs and rodents, and she knew nothing about HIV or AIDS. What's more, she had no idea where to find her subjects. Unlike the cities of Mumbai, Delhi, and Calcutta, which have well-known red light districts, Chennai had no fixed address for adult workers. So, she began frequenting the Madras General Hospital, where many women were treated for STDs. In the hospital, Nirmala befriended a couple of adult workers, and they would point out other workers to her. When she looked at their medical forms, she noticed that many had V Home written on them. It stood for Vigilance Home, where adult workers and destitute women were remanded by the authorities. Soliciting was and still is illegal in India, and these women would be arrested and sent to the remand home because they were too poor to pay the bail. So, every morning, before going to work, Nirmala began dropping in at the remand home to visit the adult workers. She had been raised in a traditional family in a small village, was married, had 2 small children, and was the nervous type. But she was encouraged by her husband, Veerappan Ramamurthy, who supported her every step of the way. Often, he drove her to the remand home on his scooter. The couple were just starting out in their careers and didn't have any funds to spare, and that way, she could save the bus fare. Over 3 months, she gathered more than 80 samples. She had no gloves and no safety equipment. And the adult workers had no idea what they were being tested for. She didn't tell them that they were looking for AIDS. The workers were all illiterate, and even if she had told them, they wouldn't have understood what AIDS was. They thought she was taking samples for venereal diseases. The mentor, who was married to a heart and lung surgeon, created a small makeshift lab with equipment borrowed from her husband and others, in which she and Nirmala separated the serum from the blood samples, a key part of the testing process. In the absence of a better storage facility, Nirmala kept them in her home refrigerator. As there was no facility for ELISA testing in Chennai, Dr. Solomon arranged for the samples to be tested at the Christian Medical College in Vellore, 200 kilometers away from Chennai. One day in February 1986, Nirmala and her husband put the samples in an ice box and boarded an overnight train to Kitpati. From there, they took an auto rickshaw to reach CMC. There, Virology Department Director Jacob T. John assigned 2 junior colleagues, P. George Babu and Eric C. Moyes, to help Nirmala. They began testing at 8:30 a.m. In the afternoon, there was a power cut, so they all took a tea break. After the break, Dr. George Babu and Nirmala arrived at the lab first. Dr. George Babu opened the lid and quickly shut it. But she had seen it. 6 of the samples had turned yellow. She was stunned. She had never expected anything like that. There was no denying the positive result anymore. It was staring them all in the face. They asked her from where she had collected these samples, and before they returned to Chennai, Nirmala and her husband were sworn to secrecy. They again returned to the vigilance home, this time with Solomon, Babu and C. Moyes, and they collected samples from the 6 women again. C. Moyes flew with the samples to the US, where a Western blot test confirmed that the deadly HIV had indeed arrived in India. The grim news was conveyed to the Indian Council for Medical Research, which informed the then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and then Tamil Nadu State Health Minister H.V. Hand. When Hand announced the bad news in the State Assembly, Nirmala and Solomon were seated in the visitors' gallery. The initial reaction of the people was disbelief. Some questioned the tests, some said the doctors had made a mistake. People were really angry. They said a North Indian woman was telling them they were dirty. The authorities began a mad scramble to come up with a response. Authorities launched massive screening and prevention programs. Over the years, HIV/AIDS turned into an epidemic in India, growing rapidly, pervading every corner of the country. For years, it was believed that India had the highest number of infected people in the world, with 5.2 million infections, until new estimates in 2006 nearly halved that number. But even today, more than 2.1 million infected people live in India, and the deadly disease, which still has no cure, remains a killer. For her part, Nirmala went back to her studies. She had to still collect more than 100 of the 200 samples she had agreed to screen for her thesis. Over the next few weeks, she continued to visit remand homes for adult workers and prisons to meet gay men. In March 1987, she submitted her dissertation, Surveillance for AIDS in Tamil Nadu, wrote her exams, passed, and joined the vaccine production program at the King Institute of Preventive Medicine in Chennai, from which she retired in 2010. Exactly 37 years after her groundbreaking work confirmed the presence of HIV/AIDS in India, Nirmala is all but forgotten. Except for the few press reports at the time about her triumph, there's been little recognition of her sterling work. That's it for today's video. Stay safe and healthy.